He fired me the morning after his father stepped down. Just like that. No explanation, no hesitation, just a stack of papers, a line about reshaping the future, and a nod to someone I barely knew. I sat there for a moment, the words circling in my head. It's nothing personal, Peter. We're just moving in a different direction. I looked at him, polished, maybe 30, probably less, and I realized he didn't remember the first time he walked into the building. He was 13. I had taken him on a tour of the floor his father used to call the engine room. He barely made eye contact then. Not much had changed. My name is Peter Langford. I worked for that company for 26 years. Started in operations, worked through systems, finance, compliance. Kept moving, not because someone told me to, but because every time a gap appeared, I stepped in and solved it. That was how the old man worked too. His father, the founder. He built the business from a single office to a regional force. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady and people trusted it. I never thought of myself as essential. I just did the work, made the systems reliable, trained people well, and kept things moving when others froze. That's what mattered then. But when the founder retired and handed everything to his son, I knew something would shift. I just didn't expect it to happen so quickly, or so cleanly. The new CEO, his son, didn't bother with small talk. He thanked me for my decades of service, like someone reading from a printout. There was no emotion in his voice. He didn't ask questions, just delivered a decision. You've done great things here, Peter, but it's time we evolve the leadership structure and bring in some fresh direction. We're investing in a new model. I nodded, said nothing. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I cleared out my things that same day. No farewell message, no town hall announcement. Just quiet nods from the few who saw me leave. Most didn't even know. What he didn't know was I wasn't just another mid-level name on the org chart. I had built the architecture he was about to lean on. Not metaphorically, literally. Every process his new strategy relied on. It traced back to frameworks I had created. Quietly, over years, through hundreds of late nights and early mornings. He didn't know that I documented every version of every proprietary model we ever used. Not because I expected a moment like this, but because that's what I did. I kept clean records, notebooks, external drives, timelines. When systems failed, mine didn't. When vendors flaked, my backups worked. But I didn't tell him any of this. I didn't need to. I walked out without raising my voice. No emails, no LinkedIn rants. I just went home, sat down in the same chair where I used to review vendor contracts on weekends, and opened a folder I hadn't looked at in years. It was labeled Continuity Assets. What I saw confirmed what I already knew. The systems they were depending on weren't plug and play. They were curated, tuned to the people, the timing, the exceptions no outside firm would ever think to ask about. In the weeks that followed, I got calls, not from the new CEO, of course, but from people still inside. Confused, frustrated, asking about documentation they couldn't find, processes that had stopped syncing, a financial model they couldn't explain to auditors. I didn't gloat. I didn't say, "I told you so." I just listened. I gave them what I could without overstepping legal bounds, and I moved on. But I remembered everything, and I began to think seriously about what came next. Not for revenge, not for drama, but because I had spent more than 2 decades solving real problems. I knew the rhythm of businesses like ours. I knew how to stabilize a ship mid-storm without shouting from the deck. So I made a decision. Quietly, intentionally. I wasn't going to return. I wasn't going to ask for a meeting. I was going to build something of my own. not from bitterness, but from clarity. I knew how things were supposed to work, and I knew that some clients weren't calling the new leadership anymore. Some of them were calling me. It started with one, a long-standing contract I had helped implement years ago. They reached out, not even knowing I'd left, just needing help with a system integration. When I told them I was no longer with the firm, there was silence, then a sigh. Honestly, Peter, I'm not surprised. They didn't even hesitate before asking if I was open to consulting. Not freelance patchwork, but formal support. Strategic rebuild. They didn't want buzzwords, they wanted stability. By the third call like that, I stopped calling it coincidence. I wasn't interested in becoming some self-proclaimed savior. That wasn't my style. But I did see the writing on the wall. The new CEO was focused on vision and disruption. Great in theory, but dangerous when you don't understand what you're replacing. And he didn't. He hadn't asked how anything worked. He hadn't met with any department heads. He brought in consultants within the first 10 days, and they started rewriting policies that took us years to balance properly. I saw the internal memos later. A few were passed to me anonymously. I recognized phrases I had written, only now they were stripped of context. They were going to move fast, break things, reimagine workflows. And for a company like ours, that was code for expect fallout. Meanwhile, I started sketching outlines, not for revenge, not even for competition. But because I realized something I hadn't admitted in years, I actually knew how to build something better, simpler, smarter, without the overhead, without the politics. And I had time now. I rented a small office space above a quiet print shop 2 towns over. No signs, no LinkedIn updates, just space to think. And I began writing out what would become the foundation of a new firm, not a copy, a counterbalance. I didn't want to work with everyone, just the ones who valued consistency over flash, results over noise. I wanted fewer clients, deeper work, better outcomes. The funny thing about getting fired is, it shows you where you stand, who calls, who doesn't, who notices you're gone, who pretends you were never there. The new CEO didn't call, not once, but his team kept emailing, quietly, discreetly, asking questions about legacy systems, licenses, even security protocols. And I answered, briefly, politely, and only what I was legally bound to share. I wasn't trying to burn bridges. I just knew where I stood now. And they didn't. Not yet, but they would. I didn't rush into anything. When you spend over 2 decades in the same organization, you learn not to overreact. Most mistakes I ever saw came from someone moving too fast, trying to fix something they hadn't taken the time to understand. So, I took my time. The second week after I left, I sat alone in that small rented office with nothing but a notebook, a laptop, and silence. It was the first time in years I'd been able to think without the dull hum of emails, meetings, and office politics. And in that stillness, I began mapping it all out. Not just what the business needed, but what it never had. We had always been reactive. Even when things were good, we were chasing problems, never getting ahead of them. I wanted something different this time. Predictable systems, clear communication, tools that didn't require someone like me working behind the curtain 12 hours a day just to keep them running. It was only then that I realized how much I'd carried. Not just systems and files, but people, clients, staff, pressure. And now it was gone. But oddly, I didn't feel empty, I felt sharper. And the more I wrote, the clearer it became. I wasn't just designing a consulting firm or a temporary gig. I was shaping a business model from everything I wish the old place had done right. Still, I didn't announce anything publicly. I didn't even give it a name yet. Instead, I listened, and the calls kept coming. 3 clients in the span of a month, then 5. Some were confused about my departure. A few were blunt. "We're not happy with the new direction." One in particular stood out. They said, "He's treating this place like a tech startup." Problem is, we're not. We're in risk-heavy logistics. Flashy slides don't fix broken handoffs. That one stuck with me, because it was true. What the son didn't understand, and what no consultant could teach him overnight, was that our business thrived on boring. The things we did best were invisible when done right. Quiet fixes, preventative action, long-term trust. But he was after something else. He wanted to scale, to disrupt, to modernize without understanding why things had lasted as long as they had in the first place. By the time month 2 rolled around, I had 10 clients asking for support. At first, I said no. I wasn't ready. But then one client, an old partner I respected, said, "Peter, we're not asking for a flashy rebrand. We just want the version of you who used to fix things at 7 a.m. before the rest of the world even noticed they were broken." So I said yes, quietly. We set up a short-term advisory agreement. No marketing, no fanfare, just a call every other week, a few reports, and me solving problems in the background again, like old times, and the results started stacking up. Things that had taken their internal team 3 months to untangle, I cleaned up in days. Not because I was smarter, but because I knew the system. I knew where the friction was buried. They referred someone else, then another. And by the end of that quarter, I had more incoming work than I could handle alone. That's when I brought in someone I trusted. Not a partner, just someone good with operations. We didn't even use official titles. We didn't need to. We knew what mattered: precision, process, follow-through. Meanwhile, word started to get back to me about how things were going inside the company I'd left. I didn't ask for updates. But when people call you for help, they talk. And what they described wasn't surprising. Departments were being restructured faster than people could adapt. 3 senior managers resigned. 2 major clients began reviewing their contracts, quietly but seriously. And an internal audit flagged a systems vulnerability that, ironically, had never existed until the new platform was implemented. I wasn't smiling, I wasn't even satisfied, I just felt resolved. He hadn't fired me because I failed. He fired me because he didn't understand what I did, not really. To him, I was just part of the furniture, familiar but outdated. What he didn't know was that the furniture had been holding up the floor. But none of that mattered now, because by then I had something new, a name, a formal registration, a business account, and 5 clients signed to annual retainers. Nothing massive, nothing flashy, but it was real and it was mine. The first time I saw one of the consultants he hired post a win on social media, it was about a new data dashboard they had implemented. Looked nice, sleek charts, big numbers. Except it was solving the wrong problem. I knew the account, knew the logistics gap they'd been trying to close for years. Pretty graphs weren't going to fix the root issue: staff training, process timing, coordination delays. But again, that wasn't my concern anymore. I had made my peace. Until one night, around 8:30, I got an email. From an address I hadn't seen before. It was short, 2 lines. "Peter, we're looking at one of your original workflows. We need clarity on how you handled load balancing in the dispatch model. Can you advise?" It was signed by the new director of infrastructure, someone I'd never met, probably hired after I left. I read the message 3 times. They were still using it. The framework, my design. I didn't respond right away. I gave it a night. Then I wrote back politely, "I'm not affiliated with the company anymore. You'll want to check the version archive under Q for Year 4, subfolder labeled Sustain Ops. That should point you in the right direction. That was it. I wasn't their fix-it guy anymore. Still, I saved the email. I'm not sure why, maybe because it was proof that what I built mattered, that the foundation was still holding, even after they tore off the nameplate. 2 weeks later, I got a call from someone I hadn't heard from in years, a senior figure at one of the firm's legacy clients. He didn't mince words. We're hearing things. If you're doing private work now, we'd like to talk. That call changed everything, because they weren't just looking for a quick fix, they were looking for continuity. And that was the one thing the new leadership couldn't offer. They could bring in new tools, rebrand departments, give keynote speeches, but they couldn't recreate trust. And trust, I'd learned, was a slow, quiet thing. You earn it one fix at a time, one conversation, one deliverable, year after year. And when you lose it, you don't get it back with slogans. That night, I met with my small team. Just 2 of us officially, 3 contractors helping part-time. We looked at the numbers, the projections, the real potential, and I said it out loud for the first time. We're not just consulting anymore. We're building something stable, quiet but serious. And we were. I never went on a public rant. I never posted a single word about being fired. I let the work speak. I let silence do the heavy lifting. But one detail the CEO never knew, the one that mattered more than anything else, was this. He didn't just fire an employee. He handed over, without realizing it, the keys to the structure his business was still running on. And I didn't burn it down. I simply built something beside it. The day I realized we'd crossed the line from surviving to thriving, there was no announcement, no applause. Just a Tuesday morning and a dashboard showing green across every project. That's what I'd always aimed for. Not noise, not spectacle, stability. Our firm had grown, quietly and steadily. Not into a massive empire, that was never the goal. But we had the kind of clients that didn't flinch at signing multi-year agreements. The kind who valued what we offered, because they understood how rare it had become. Consistency. Most of the people who came to us weren't looking for reinvention. They were looking for something solid, predictable, safe, and we gave them that. Not by promising the moon, but by listening, fixing what was broken, documenting what worked, repeating that again and again. There were times I caught myself waiting for something to go wrong, some reminder that it had all come too easy, but it hadn't, it was just quiet. And in business, quiet is earned. Still, I never stopped paying attention to the company I'd left. Not because I wanted revenge, but because it was connected to everything that came after. Over time, more of the people I used to work with began showing up in my inbox. Some asked for opportunities, some just wanted to talk. The theme was always the same: disillusionment. Turnover was constant. Strategy changed with every new consultant. One quarter, it was agility, the next it was automation. But no one was fixing the fundamentals: communication, coordination, culture. Then I got the invitation, a private email, professional tone, but I recognized the address, the CEO's assistant. They were planning a legacy partners event, a soft way to say they wanted to rebuild bridges. It was clear what they were doing, trying to patch the perception, show stability where there wasn't any. I didn't respond right away. Not because I was angry, I just needed to think. A week later, a second message came through, this time from a board member. A man I hadn't spoken to in almost 3 years. He wasn't dancing around it. Peter, we're reviewing executive performance. If you're willing, we'd like to talk, informally, about your time at the company, Your observations before your departure and your current work, off the record. That told me everything I needed to know. Things were unraveling, and they were looking backward for answers. So I agreed, not out of spite, out of obligation. We met in a quiet office downtown. No fanfare, just coffee and straight conversation. He asked questions. I answered honestly. I told him the truth about what was working when I left, what concerns I'd raised, what processes I'd kept together with duct tape and sheer hours. I didn't embellish, I didn't gloat. I just gave him what he asked for. When he asked what I was doing now, I simply said, solving the problems I used to patch in silence, but now I get to build the solution from the ground up. He nodded. He already knew. They all did. It was part of the reason I was there. He didn't make a formal offer, didn't suggest I come back, but the implication was there, some quiet fantasy of restoration. I shut that down quickly. I said, I don't want back in. That chapter is closed, but I'll always care about the people still inside. If this helps them, then I'm glad I came, and I meant that. A few months later, the CEO stepped down. Officially, it was positioned as a strategic transition, a move toward new priorities. But I knew what it really was, a quiet exit, just like mine, but without the foundation to stand on. What he never understood is that leadership isn't just about pushing forward. It's about protecting what already works. And the company had worked because people like me, like dozens of others, were holding the seams together behind the curtain. You don't inherit that with a job title. You earn it over time, or you lose it in a heartbeat. I never went back. But I did get one more message. It was from someone still inside. Not high up, just someone who'd stayed through the turbulence. They said, it's different now. Not perfect, but more grounded. Just wanted to say thank you for what you built and what you didn't let break. I sat with that message for a while, not because I needed praise, but because it was the last piece of closure I didn't know I was waiting for. In the end, I didn't burn the bridge, I just built something better beside it. And in the quiet that followed, people chose where they wanted to walk.